Hello, and welcome to Off the Field and Screens, the Detroit Way, a Detroit sports podcast. I'm your host, Chad Marriott, and this week, the overall tenor is going to be a lot better. The Lions, starting out with the Lions, they were a lot better this week. So a lot of the questions and criticisms last week were surrounding the offensive line, the defensive line, and the coaching changes. I want to start with that coaching change, the coordinators, because that's the one that was blowing up quite a bit that I actually didn't think was a very big deal, because Dan Campbell is such like a player's coach, a people coach. He was always going to let these new coaches find their way rather than imposing something on them. And I think short term you could see things like that when you're a player's coach, where you're going to have these, they're figuring it out still. Oh, the communication wasn't great. And he had to probably go in and help clean that up. But I think long term, I know it's just week to week, but long term, you'll see that investment in people will pay off. With Morton and Shepard finding their own rhythms as coordinators, and everything looked a lot tighter this week. There's still improvements in there for sure. There was some miscommunication on a pass play in the first half, and defensively, like who was taking the cross route. And yeah, but overall, everything looked better. The offensive line was much more cohesive. And the offense, the play calling, the weapons, etc., will get a lot of credit. But that all starts with the offensive line. And Mahogany, Glasgow, Rutledge, they were all much better this week. It was a cohesive unit. Of course, Decker and Sewell are always great. But yeah, one thing that was, I think, important to note, though, about the offense is I'm not always like the big Goff, praise, but he was really good this week. The way he was able to extend plays. And they were simple things. He didn't have to make a play with his feet, but one time he stepped up towards the line and made a great throw to get a first down. And if he improves that part of his game where he can go a little off script, which is funny that this was the game he did it against Ben Johnson, who commented on not having a quarterback that could go off script. I think if he's able to do that, if he's able to grow that part of his game, he's going to not just be good but great. That's the only thing right now separating him, because he's got the IQ, he's got a decent arm, but if he can extend plays even a little bit and get more crafty with it, he doesn't have to be a speedster or rushing for first downs or anything like that. Just extend the play a little bit. Find a way to get the throw off. And I think they were probably more ready for that. Because last week, I think, everything was, it's just like last year, which was a great test. It was probably very informative for the staff and the players that, okay, we do have some different personnel. We do have some different philosophies. We need to adjust to that. And it looked like everybody did. Great. Turning to the defense, great to see Aiden Hutchinson get his first sack since his injury last year in October. He looked a lot more comfortable this week too, and I'm not sure if that's because Green Bay's offensive line is that much better than Chicago's, but he just looked more... he looked faster, he looked more explosive. So that's a good sign going into week 2, going towards week 3. The pass rush overall, though, 4 sacks, it was much better. I think one of the things with that, though, is in the first half it did not look great. And that's because they weren't up big. Once they got into the second half and Chicago was in obvious passing situations, the pass rush looked excellent because they could just go. They're like, they got to pass it, don't have to protect for the run here. So they just went after it there. And last week I commented, I quoted, Dan Campbell's introductory press conference that when you knock us down, we're going to get back up and we're going to take a chunky on the way up. They lived that ethos in this week against Chicago. There was no, it was everything you'd want from like a bounce back game. And I still think that the Lions are better when they're underestimated and finding ways to, like that Michael Jordan making up fake quotes thing even, but the Lions have been better in these situations. This week it was the media criticism of week 1 and plus the Ben Johnson thing, which I always said the coaching change was not going to be a big deal, that they were going to be fine. And the same should be said, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn both starting 0-2. There shouldn't be overreactions to, they should have stayed. Or I think they both could end up being solid head coaches. They both picked teams in tough situations. For whatever reason, it's hard to win in New York. Probably because everything. If you think the Detroit fan base overreacts, take a look at the Jets. And then in Chicago is a kind of an odd situation too, and going into a division with some other good teams, although get to that in a second. I didn't think it was going to derail them entirely. And then one thing too, nobody should be overreacting that this was the blowout this week, because I'm not sure Chicago's that good, and I don't want to take any away from the Lions because they played really well. They executed really well. But a few things helped. The 2 turnover on downs, going for it on 4th down that they were able to stop. That's huge for the defense. And then the 2 turnovers, the fumble, the forced fumble from Branch, recovered by Campbell, and then Kirby Joseph's interception. By the way, best safety duo in the NFL, not even close. When the other team turns it over 4 times, and then they get behind and they get into the situation where they have to pass, it gets increasingly difficult to win that game. That's not to take anything away from the Lions' win, but there shouldn't be a massive overreaction in the opposite direction, because the schedule coming up features the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Buccaneers, and the Bengals. 4 out of the next 5 weeks. And even Cleveland Browns, that other game, they have a pretty good defense. I mean, there could be some interesting challenges there. And the Bengals did lose their quarterback. Joe Burrow, as of this morning, I think they said, is going to be out for 3 months. That's still a team with talented wide receivers, talented weapons on offense. So I don't think that's going to just be a walk-in and collect a victory. Baltimore, I'm pause on that, but Kansas City again, that's a tough team. They've started out 0-2, multiple time Super Bowl champs. This feels like the last hurrah of this version of Kansas City. So depending on what they look like, what their record's like at that time, how they do in between then and now, that could be a very dangerous matchup for the Lions. So that's not something to be overlooked. And then the Ravens matchup, Dan Campbell is 0-2. Last time they played, in October of 23, the Lions lost 38-6 and gave up 503 yards. And the Lions averaged 4.7 yards per play, and the Ravens averaged 9.1 yards per play. It was just an absolute beatdown. And then in the previous Dan Campbell, in 2021, they lost on Justin Tucker's 66-yard, his record 66-yard field goal as time ran out. Overall, in the 7 meetings, the Lions are 1-6. Just a little fun fact for you here. The only time they beat them was in 2005. Head coach Steve Mariucci, Joey Harrington threw for 97 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions, and Sean Bryson had a 77-yard touchdown run. And this goes back to this kind of bulletin board material revenge tour thing that this version of the Lions have been doing. Like this Chicago game is the latest example of that. Last year, they put it on Dallas, and you could see they wanted to put it on San Francisco because of the bad call against Dallas and losing to San Francisco in the NFC Championship. I could see this being, for this Lions team, this is a statement. Monday Night Football, you could have, there's probably more people like me that are like, oh, well, they lost to Green Bay, and who knows if Chicago, doesn't look very good. Is that dominant win more telling towards that they're heading in the right direction, that they're going to be, that 15-2 type team again, or are they going to fall back a little bit this year? The tougher schedule suggests that 15 wins is going to be hard to get to. But we'll see. I think that could play that could be the big storyline in this game. Is this the revenge game against Baltimore? Because that's a team that's had their number. And then the thought I want to leave with, is Green Bay really that good? Or is Chicago really that bad? Or is it a combination of both? Green Bay's a good team, which I think is true. And is Chicago bad? Which I'm starting to think is true, because they gave up that game to Minnesota, and Minnesota did not look good on Sunday Night Football against Atlanta. I guess they're one J.J. McCarthy good quarter, though, one out of 8 that Chicago lost that game. But suddenly, it's early, it's 2 weeks, but this is NFL, this is football in general. There's not a lot of games, so you have to make a lot out of what you see, because there's not a lot. The sample size might be small, but the division this year is, I think, Detroit and Green Bay, the early outlook. And I'm sure when they play them again later, this year, that the Lions will be on that's another revenge tour type performance that we could see. All right, enough on the Lions. That was great. Exciting to see all the offense. If you had any Lions in fantasy football, you had a good Sunday. Let's turn to the Tigers. They got that magic number down to 7. But they're heading into a 3-game series against Cleveland. And this, I think if they could sweep Cleveland this week, it would go a long way to kind of putting this division to rest. Silence a lot of things. Because I think the Tigers, obviously, everybody always wants to win. You're always playing to win. But I also think there's an element that they are looking to try and figure out what they have in the bullpen, the starting rotation, etc., etc. Now, last week I was very loud about the starting pitching had not been great. And that was true. The last week, the pitching has been a lot better. The bullpen is really trending, I think, upward in general. But the offense wasn't producing. But I don't know if baseball is such hot streaks and slumps and hot streaks and slumps. I think that when you have a Riley Green, a Kerry Carpenter, Dylan Dingler's been great. Spencer Torkelson has cooled off, and then it looks like he's about to heat back up. I think they're going to be okay in that. I think the bigger concern going towards the playoff is making sure you have the pitching to keep you in games. Yeah, because the thing where they spot the other team 3-4 runs in the first inning in the playoffs, you're dead in the water. So, just looking at this, one thing was Cater Montero threw a great game yesterday. 5 innings, 5 strikeouts, no walks, no runs. His total ERA this season is 4.32, but as a starter, it's 3.55. And with the Charlie Morton, Chris Paddock experience, I don't see why not for this last couple of weeks why he doesn't get another start. And even into the playoffs, unless something changes. I mean, he looks better than. And they tried Sawyer Gipson-Long again, who's hurt again. But he looks better than anybody else they've tried. So I think, he doesn't have the stuff, right, that some of these other guys have, the thing they're looking for. But he's an innings eater. He can get the job done. Overall, Canely had one bad outing in September, but in September, he's got a 2.84 ERA. There's 5 walks. That's not great, but he had no walks yesterday in helping the Tigers beat the Marlins. They need him. They need Tommy Kahnle. That's why they keep putting him back out there, why he's getting these opportunities. Is if they want to do anything in October, they need Tommy Kahnle. Another big storyline was Jose Urquidy. Pitched his first game since September 29th of 2023. He went 1 1/3 innings, gave up 2 hits, had 2 strikeouts, no walks. Left with 2 guys on. But, I mean, that could be a big answer for them as well. Another guy that looks like he'll be a bullpen guy, maybe in one of these pitching chaos scenarios, which I think they're going to end up doing in the playoffs. I think you could have Skubal, Mize, Flaherty, Montero, probably maybe even a short start from Montero, followed by a pitching chaos day in the playoffs. It's more doable throughout the playoffs to have one of those, and why not? Vest in September has pitched 5 1/3 innings, has a 0 ERA. Brennan Hanafy, 4 1/3, has 0 ERA. So neither of those guys have given up any runs in the month, any earned runs, that is. Troy Melton had that one rough outing, but he's still 9 2/3 in September, 2.79 ERA. And Bailey Horn, 3 2/3, 2.45 ERA. Montero, Rafael, had a really good stretch there, and then he's had a couple of rough outings, but it was going to happen. That's what happens with relievers. I still think that he's going to be part of any success they have in the postseason. Going to have to be. And Holton in September has not been great. He's really, really, really struggled this month, and hopefully he can turn it around. And then you have a few guys that could be coming back from injuries. That Paul Sewald, I'm still not sure. He's thrown in Toledo a little bit. Kyle Finnegan, the reports are saying he's going to throw by the end of this week. And Brand Herter, which would be a big get to have him back. I think you're looking at this. I think what they're looking at is who's going to be. They're answering questions. Who's going to be on the postseason roster? Which of these pitchers is going to take us there? Which of these bullpen? Particularly, I think they're looking at a combination for some pitching chaos in the postseason. Now, Chris Paddock is also in the bullpen. He had that really cool, 3-out save against the Yankees in that blowout. That's cool. I right now don't see that he'll be one of the guys on the postseason roster. I just don't. I don't see it. I don't think he's proven reliable enough. And you've had similar issues with Charlie Morton, but I mean, because he's a veteran. And I want to talk about that real quick. They clearly have a thing that they're looking for, an archetype in the rotation, an elder statesman of the rotation with, good stuff. They tried Kenta Maeda, and that didn't work out. Unfortunately, Alex Cobb could never get healthy enough for that to work out. And now they're trying Charlie Morton, which is the third veteran type that they've tried. And I have to imagine long term that this is the last one that they're going to try like this. And they're going to have to this offseason try to get somebody with a higher percentage chance of staying healthy and working out. I mean, of course, it's easy to say, oh, you have to get good pitching. I think the idea was they wanted to leave it open for like Jackson Jobe and Troy Melton, possibly, like some of these guys in the minor leagues that they thought could work their way up, or Sawyer Gipson-Long. I think that they really thought Sawyer Gipson-Long was going to be part of the rotation once he came back this year, and unfortunately, post-injury, he's just not had the consistency. He's not had the performance to be a part of the rotation, which is unfortunate. It's kind of a sad reminder about baseball. Sometimes these players will look really good, and then they'll get injured once, and the injury bug will bite them over and over and over again, and the performance declines. You saw it with Matt Manning. You saw it with Ryan Kreidler. Not that Kreidler ever did at the major league level, but it's hard to say, like, did these injuries completely derail what they could have been? I don't know. But it's a common story, I think, in baseball. And then I want to go over real quick. I thought there was like this growing idea that the Tigers haven't been very good against bad teams, but that's actually, it's hard to say that because the season series they've lost this year are to Miami, Oakland, Cincinnati, the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Mets, the Phillies, the Pirates, the Mariners, the Rangers, the Blue Jays, and the Nationals. They have a series against Atlanta, and they could still lose the season series to Cleveland, which would be an absolute disaster. But a lot of those were just 3-game sets. So Oakland, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Texas, and Toronto were the only ones that were more than just a 3-game series that they lost. And some of those teams are good and some of them aren't. So I think that that's more of a perception thing. And our good news is they are 20-9 in one-run games this year. So if they can stick in it, that's probably the emphasis on the bullpen, trying to get that figured out. I wouldn't freak out right yet about their chances in the postseason. And there are obviously concerns, but the question is, which team do you believe in, the first half or the second half? I argue, if you're veering on it, is that you never believed this style of play would succeed anyway. You're always buying into, we need star power, because the Dodgers have not had a great second half either. But people are still pretty high on them. Why? Well, because they have the stars. They have Shohei. They have the big bats for it. Which says to me that if you're buying them and you're not buying the Tigers, that means that you don't buy the take the extra bases, grind it out, pitching chaos, matchup based AJ Hinch style baseball. You don't buy it. I buy it still. I think it's a winning brand of baseball. And when they get into the postseason, I guess we're going to find out. And then the other one, looking at injury, Matt Vierling is doing some rehab, I think, in Toledo. This weekend he did. And we'll have to see, or he's getting ready to. I don't know that they'll bring him back at this point in the season. Maybe they will, to see what they can get, out of him. That probably means like a Sweeney would be going, off the team. Just to see, like, can he contribute? Is there enough time to get him going again? Parker Meadows in September, 8 games, hitting .345, .992 OPS. He's come back in the outfield at the plate, been phenomenal. Huge ad for them, especially offensively. On both sides, but the offense is the big surprise. So if he could keep that up, I mean, that's going to be a major add to that lineup in the postseason as well. So really, the pitching. Oh, and then I wanted to mention Casey Mize and Jack Flaherty. Their last outings last week, and Mize's last two outings have been good. So you have that second guy, I think, in Mize, and everybody just keep crossing your fingers that if Flaherty in these last 2 weeks and into the postseason can be the Flaherty everybody knows that he's capable of, they have a really good chance with that front three in a playoff series. And I think that the way everything lined up, why did they do extra rest days? Why did they kind of finagle who's pitching what day? Hinch was obviously looking forward to this Cleveland series where you're going to have Mize, Flaherty, and Skubal. I mean, those are your best three pitchers to give you a chance to win. They didn't have a pitching chaos day in this series. They didn't set it up so you had to have like some Sawyer Gibson Long type start. Not that he could, he's hurt. But the point being is he's clearly managed it so that they have the best chance to win all three of these games. And this is going to be like a playoff series, and I think it should be viewed through our lens as this is what a playoff series could look like. I could see that amount of intensity because if they could sweep this, they're pretty good going down the stretch, and they can go back to trying to answer questions, fix lineups, and see who's ready and make those evaluations. Obviously, they already are, but in this one, they need to get these 3 games. I think that was probably against the Marlins this weekend. That was probably not emphasized as much. Of course, they're always trying to win, but I think everything was being set up for this Cleveland series because it's important. And that is about it. Check out the website. We have some offthefieldandscreen.com, offthefieldandscreen.com. Have some articles about college football, the NFL, the Lions, the Tigers, and there's going to be some Pistons and Red Wings content coming soon. Of course, we also do movie reviews, and we have a new podcast where we review movies. Chad and Mary Ruth go to the movies. So like, subscribe, follow these things, check them out. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. This has been The Detroit Way.